For the Charles by Shirley Jackson project, I'm going to guide you of how to do each slide successfully by doing vocabulary, reading the story, working on characters, characterization, identifying the setting, identifying the plot elements, theme, and summaries. So on this first slide, before you get started on the next slide, you're going to take a look at the title Charles and these three pictures here, to form a prediction about what the story might be about. Once you determine what you want to write and reflect thinking about, well, what is Charles? Is it a boy? Is it a girl name? I see the picture of a school and two boys here at the bottom. You're going to type inside this blue box after where it says type here, and you're going to use a sentence starter to describe your prediction. You could say, I predict. You can say, my prediction is. And then make sure you give me a prediction. There's no wrong answer of what you think the story might be about based on what you see about these two boys, the picture of the school, and the name Charles. That's it for slide 1. So whenever you need to work on something, you pause it. So if you need to work on this, pause this video, work on it, and then move to slide 2, and then click play again, and then I'll give you the directions for slide 2. That is how you will follow these directions from beginning to end. For slide 2, this is our first vocabulary slide. What you're going to be doing is taking these 4 words that are in purple up here in this dotted gray box. You have the word coldly, fresh, renounced, and smirked. Over here on the right, there is a definition for each one of these words. Coldly means not kind or friendly. Fresh means rude or sassy. Renounced means to reject or give up. And smirked means to smile in an offensive or rude way. So what you're doing on this slide and the next is you're going to read each sentence, and then you're going to determine using context clues and these definitions on the right to figure out what best word goes in these white blanks. And I'll do the first one for you. Number 1 says, the day my son Lori started kindergarten, he blanked overalls. So overalls, I know, is a piece of clothing, something that you wear. And then Lori is the character, he's starting kindergarten. So what is he doing with these overalls? So either it's going to be the day my son Lori started kindergarten, he coldly overalls. He was not kind or friendly to overalls. Well, that doesn't make sense because he's doing something with the overalls. It's not the way he feels about them. The next one says fresh. The day my son Lori started kindergarten, he fresh overalls. So he was rude and sassy overalls? Well, that doesn't make sense either. So the next one is renounced, mean to reject or give up. The day my son Lori started kindergarten, he renounced overalls. So he rejected or gave up overalls. That makes sense. That means he doesn't want to wear them anymore. Let's check the last one. The day my son Lori started kindergarten, he smirked overalls. So smirk means to smile in an offensive or rude way. So he smiled overalls. Well, that doesn't make sense either. So what you're going to do is now take renounced, and you're going to drag it over here where it fits inside the white space to show that's what word goes in that white blank. Now what I'm going to do is read out loud all of slide 2. Then you'll pause the video, do it on your slide, and then you go to slide 3, and then select play again. So number 2 says, Lori stared at his father blank. I didn't learn nothing, he remarked. Number 3 says, but the teacher spanked a boy, Lori said, for being blank. And number 4 says, the next day, Lori sat down for lunch and blank. So what you're going to be doing is now looking at the vocabulary words and their definitions and seeing which one of these last 3 purple vocabulary words fit in these white spaces. So this is your opportunity to pause the video, go do your slide 2, and whenever you're ready to come back, You'll play the video again for slide 3. For slide 3, it's the same exact thing, but with 4 different vocabulary words. You have the word routine, haggard, grimly, and hysterically. The definitions for routine is normal or average. Haggard means tired or drained. Grimly means sadly or depressingly. And then hysterically means wildly funny. Let me read number 1. Look down, Lori said. Look at my thumb. Gee, you're dumb. He began to laugh. How? Number 2 is Wednesday and Thursday are blank. Number 3 is Lori reported blank. At lunch Thursday, Charles was so good today, the teacher gave him an apple. And then number 4, none of them looked unhappy and blank enough to be the mother of Charles. So pause the video, take the time to go to your slide 3, drag and match where they belong, and then when you are done, you come back, unpause it, and you may go to slide 4. Okay, slide 4 through 6 is going to be the story. Up here at the top, you see a link. It says to click this link to listen to the story and follow along. When you click on this link, it's going to take you to a recording of the story. When you open it up, it's going to begin, and you're going to follow along to it in the slides on slides 4 through 6. And you'll hit play, then go back to the story and read along with the story from pages 1 through 6. So whenever you're ready, pause the video, listen to the story from slides 4 through 6, and then stop the video when it's ready, and then you'll go to slide 7. All right, slide 7 is about characters. So what you're doing on slide 7 is you're choosing which type of characters are from Charles. You have 6 characters on the right. You have Lori, Charles, Mom, Dad, little sister, and teacher. You are going to drag who you think the protagonist is, who you think the antagonists are, and the minor characters. Remember, protagonist means who's the main character in the story. The antagonist is who are the characters that are causing the most issues or conflicts in the story. And the minor characters are characters that were talked about and are in the story, but they are not as important as the protagonist and the antagonist. It doesn't revolve around them. The minor characters are still important because they help move the plot forward. So the protagonist, I'm going to give you the protagonist, and then I will give you hints for how many antagonists and minor characters are. The mom is the protagonist of the story, and this is the reason why. This story is spoken in first person, and you can tell from the story that mom is the one telling the story. So she's the main character that's telling the story from her point of view. So what you're going to do is choose which 2 characters are the antagonists. There are 2. And then you're going to select and drag where the minor characters are, and there are 3. So pause the video, do your slides on slide 7, and when you're ready, unpause the video and to move on to slide 8. Okay, slide 8 is about characterization. This is researching these words in the online dictionary to define each 5 of these words. So the first step to this is take a look at the chart. You have the word aggressive, thoughtless, impatient, cruel, and discourteous. What you're going to do is take this link that says kids.wordsmith.net, open it up, and this will be the online dictionary you're going to be using. So the first step is you're going to take the word aggressive, and you're going to look it up in the online dictionary and then type in the definition here. I'm gonna go look up aggressive. Remember, I do not like copying and pasting. You have to put it in your own words. Remember, your definition doesn't have to be the whole thing, only what helps you understand the meaning of the word. So aggressive means mean and unfriendly in one's actions. So I'm going to go back where it says underneath right definition where aggressive is. I'm going to write mean actions that are mean and unfriendly. And the next step is I see these synonyms over here on the right. I see synonyms of mean and unfriendly, brutal and fierce, uncalm and not patient, unpolite and inconsiderate. I'm going to match one of these synonyms to the definition that I wrote. Well, the definition says mean and unfriendly, and then I see a synonym that says mean and unfriendly. I'm like, okay, that should match. So you drag and match it. So what you're going to do is take the next four, look it up in the dictionary, write the definition, and then find the synonym that best matches the definition you wrote. So pause the video here, do aggressive's definition and drag the synonym. Take the time to do the rest of the slide, and then come back and unpause it to move on to slide 9. On slide 9. Slide 9 is the hardest, and pay attention as you follow along. We are not going to do effects, so I'm going to black it out in black, and you can do the same. We're going to be doing the says and the two actions here on the left. So what we're going to be doing is finding text evidence from the story. So we might have to go back to page 1 through 6 on slide 4 through 6 to understand how we can find evidence to characterize Charles. So we know Charles is most likely the antagonist of the story. He causes all the conflicts and the issues. So we're finding something that he says, because it says right here, says, finding something he says in the story to help us understand whether or not he's an aggressive person, a thoughtless person, a cruel person, impatient, or discourteous. So we're using those 5 words that you looked up from slide 8 to help use vocabulary words to describe Charles. So how we get started on this is you see on the left that there are 4 sentence starters. Sentence starters always are the way that we start a sentence. So in the first box, I'm going to write according to the text. We're going to skip the next box because I blacked it out and go to the next one that has the green arrow next to it. And I'm going to write from the reading I learned. And I'll go to the next box and say on page blank, it said. So this is how you're going to begin your textual support from the story. So it's a good time to pause the video, type in these, and then unpause it whenever you're ready to listen to the next set of directions. All right, so here's what you're going to do next. In this column here, it says to look for something that Charles says. I'm going to do the first one for you, and the last 2 actions you'll do on your own. So in my head, I'm like, I need to go back to the story and think about finding something that Charles says while he's at school that show if he's either aggressive, thoughtless, cruel, impatient, or discourteous. So I'm going to go back to slide 6, and I'm going to look on page 5. You don't have to reread the whole story. You're just skimming through it, looking through it quickly to find whatever you're trying to look for. So I'm looking for something that Charles says. So I see teacher's helper here. That's something he does. I see here Charles did today. He told a girl to say a word. Okay, so I see the word says. So I can say, okay, he said to the girl, he told her to say a word and she said it. And the teacher washed her mouth out with soap and Charles laughed. Well, based on what he said to the girl to do, that's the evidence I can find to put into slide 9 next to according to the text. So I'm going to take this text evidence where it says he told a girl to say a word and she said it. and the teacher washed her mouth out with soap, and Charles laughed. So I'm going to go back to slide 9, and then I'm going to include the text evidence, exactly how it's written, to show what Charles said, so we can figure out how to characterize him. So according to the text, Charles told a girl to say a word, and she said it. The teacher washed her mouth out with soap, and Charles laughed. So what I did was I went back to the story, I found something that Charles said, I typed it in, and then here's the next thing we have to do. So based on what Charles told a girl to say, well, how would you characterize it? If a friend told you to say a word that was bad, you didn't know it was bad, and you did it, and your friend laughed about it after you got in trouble, how would you describe that character? How would you describe your friend? So in this next box that's underneath add character trait, where I put a question mark, you're going to add either would you characterize them as aggressive? And remember the words are right here at the top, so you're choosing one of these 5 words. Would it be aggressive? Would you describe Charles telling the girl to say a word to be thoughtless? Would you describe him to be cruel or impatient or discourteous? And remember, you wrote the definitions and matched the synonyms on slide 8 right here. So that way you're able to figure out what's the best character trait. So after you're done finding the character trait, you're going to do the last 2 boxes. But instead of finding something that Charles says, you're going to find 2 actions. So you're going to go back to the story from the reading I learned, and you're going to write the evidence from the story that something that Charles did in the story to show that he was either aggressive, thoughtless, cruel, impatient, and discourteous, and type it in the box here, just like we did for the first box. After you type the evidence on an action that Charles did in the story, you're going to write the character trait where the question marks are. You do the same thing for on page blank it said, find an action that Charles did in the story to characterize him, and then you put your character trait here in the question mark. And remember, you're only using these 5 character traits that we practiced on page 8, and then right here that I'm boxing with my mouse. All right, so pause the video, take the time to do this work. It does take a little bit. This is the hardest slide to do. If you can get past this, the rest will be golden. So whenever you're ready, pause it, come back to it when you're done with slide 9, and then we can go over slide 10 together. On slide 10 is setting. So you are going to tell me, when does the story take place? So what time period? Was it the past, present, or future? And then you're going to tell me, where does the story take place? Because the setting is important to the story, because we can't have the story specifically during the time period it's in. So when you figure out when the story was taking place, past, present, or future, and where it was taking place, you're going to type your answer here below, where it says type your answer below in complete sentences. And remember, you need to start with a sentence starter. You can say, the setting is, and tell me the place and the time. You can say, the setting is when, or and where. So you're giving me an answer of answering those 2 questions at the top. When did the story take place and where it took place? So pause the video, do your slide 10. When you're done, come back and unpause it, and we'll go over slide 11. On slide 11 is plot development. So what you're going to be doing is you're going to show me that you understand the plot elements in the development of plot. So we have gone over exposition, conflict, rising actions, climax, falling actions, and resolution. So what you are going to be doing is thinking about what does exposition mean, what does conflict mean in each one of these plot elements. Then over here on the right in these green boxes are the definitions to each plot element. So you're going to drag and match where they belong. So remember expositions at the beginning of the story. What are the two things that are introduced at the beginning of a story that's important? Then the conflict is something that must happen to even have a story. And then you will put them in order of the plot elements from exposition all the way to resolution. So if you think exposition is this first one, you'll drag it inside the box to show that you've matched exposition to that definition. So take the time to pause the video, do your slide 11, and once you are done, you'll unpause it and we'll get on to slide 12. Slide 12 looks very similar to slide 11, but the difference is now you are going to match the plot elements to the plot events from the story Charles. So still going in the order from exposition all the way to resolution. And remember, plot development normally goes in order, sequential order. So how they happen in the story. First, next, later, last. I'm going to read out loud each plot element, and then you're going to drag and match where you think they belong, based on the definitions of slide 11 to help guide you. The first one says, a boy named Charles is causing problems in kindergarten and being a bad influence on the other students. The next one says, Lori's mom goes to the parent conference night to look for Charles's mom and to meet the teacher. The third one says, Lori goes to his first day of kindergarten and meets a boy named Charles and tells his family about him. Slide 4 is, Charles continues to do inappropriate things at school, like saying bad words or being disrespectful to the teacher. The next one says, the teacher reveals to Lori's mom that there is no Charles in kindergarten. And the last one says, Lori's mom finally learns the truth of who Charles really is from the teacher. So what you're going to do now is drag and match where they match in the plot elements and think about how they go in order of the story. Okay, pause the video, take time to do slide 12, and when you're ready, come back and unpause it to go to slide 13. Slide 13 is about theme. So when we did our theme notes, we talked about the differences between topics and theme statements. So what you're going to be doing is you're going to choose the best 3 topics that were discussed in Charles. Remember, topics are main ideas or subjects. So those 3 topics that you can choose from are right here in these orange boxes to the left. You have deception, which means to lie or to manipulate. You have honesty, which means telling the truth. Cooperation, meaning teamwork or working with others. Attitude, the way that you have a positive or a negative attitude towards life and people. Kindness is about being kind. And friendship is the relationship you have with your friends. So based from the story, what 3 topics were talked about in the story? And you have to make sure you understand what each of these topics mean and how you're going to explain it. So I will do the first one with you. Well, deception means to lie or to manipulate. Well, we figured out during the story that Lori was actually Charles, and Lori was being deceptive, lying about who Charles really was to his parents. So I'm going to draw deception to this orange box here underneath this other topic to show that I've chosen this topic. Then you're going to choose 2 other topics from the story that you know that the story discussed about these other 2 topics. For deception, though, in this next orange box, how do I know that the story is about deception? The directions are right up here. So you're going to paraphrase from the story explaining how the topic was in the story, how it was explained. So again, we know it's about deception. So I'm going to write in my own words how I know that this story was about deception. Lori lied about who Charles really was and made him up so he would not get in trouble from his parents. I know it's about deception because I just wrote the evidence from the story explaining why it was about deception. So what you're going to do next is you're going to find 2 other topics, drag them to these other 2 orange boxes, and then the light orange box, explain how do you know it's about that topic you chose here and how you know it's about this topic you chose here. So this is a good time to pause the video, get your slide 13 done, and once you're done, we'll go to slide 14. On slide 14, we're continuing theme. So as you finish slide 13 and found your topics and your explanations, now you're creating a theme statement based on Charles. So right here in this box, it says the author believes that you should. So you're going to be typing in an answer to finish the sentence. So think about those 3 topics that you chose from slide 13. What do you think the author wants you to learn about those topics? And in theme statements, you don't talk about what happened in the story. You're thinking about what did you learn? What did the author want to teach you? What do they want you to believe that you should do or not do? So, for example, this doesn't relate to Charles, but this is a theme statement. The author believes that you should always work with others to obtain a common goal. So that's something we can learn about our own lives from maybe the story. Well, we really didn't talk about in Charles about working together to obtain a goal. So think about one of the topics is deception that I had put for slide 13. So what does the author want you to believe that you should do about deception or not do about deception? And then you'll type your answer. So take the time to pause the video, think about the answer you're going to type, and when you're done, unpause it and come back, and we'll go over slide 15 and 16. Slide 15 is about summaries. So what you're going to be doing is analyzing each summary from the story. There are 6 summaries that are in these red boxes. What you're going to be doing is putting them in sequential order in the chart here at the bottom. So you see right here that there are 7 arrows, and then there's 7 summaries. Each summary has a proper place to go. So what you're going to do is you're going to find the summary that shows the beginning of the story and the end of the story. And once you find the beginning and the end, then you're going to find the next summary after the beginning and put it in order of how it happened in the story, not out of order. So you might have to go back to the story, pages 4 through 6, and think about how did it go in order of the story. And the middle is always the hardest because that's the rising action, and a lot happens in the rising action. So make sure you go back to the story and determine which goes in what order correctly. So I'm going to read out the summaries. This first summary here. A boy named Lori starts his first day of kindergarten. The one below it says, Lori begins telling his parents about a bad little boy named Charles. This one here says, Lori reports Charles has now become the teacher's helper. This next one here says, Lori's mom goes to the parent conference to see and meet Charles's mom. This one over here says, Charles returns to his former behavior by saying really bad words. This one says, Lori's mom realizes that Lori has been Charles the whole time. And this last one here says, Lori's parents have become concerned that Charles is a bad influence on their son. So I'm going to give you one little hint. I'm going to take Lori reports Charles has now become the teacher's helper. And I'm going to tell you, it happens in the middle of the story. So what you're going to do now is find the beginning and the end, and then put it in the order of how it happened in the story, going across, down, and then back across to the left. All right, so pause your video, get slide 15 done in order, and then when you're ready, come back and we'll do slide 16. Slide 16 is now you're going to be reading a star question about summary. So what you're going to be doing here is, what is the best summary of the story? And we know summary is about what the whole story was about, but only in a few sentences, giving the most important parts of it. There are 2 really bad answers, 2 good answers, but only one best one. So I'm going to read out loud each answer choice, and you're going to think to yourself, yes, this is correct, no, definitely not correct, or maybe it's correct. So answer choice A. Lori starts kindergarten. When he comes home, he tells his parents all about a boy named Charles. Lori's parents worry that Charles is a bad influence and that kindergarten may be too disturbing for Lori. Think about yes, this is the summary of the whole story. No, it's not, or maybe. B. When he begins kindergarten, Lori meets a troubled boy named Charles. Lori shares Charles' bad behavior daily with his concerned parents. Lori's parents wonder what kind of parents could raise a child like Lori until they learn at parent-teacher night that Lori has been Charles all along. So think about yes, no, or maybe. Answer choice C. Charles is a kindergartner who causes a lot of trouble. He says bad words and even hits some of the other children. A boy named Lori tells his parents that Charles gets spanked at school and has had his mouth washed out with soap. Yes, no, or maybe if this is the best summary for the whole entire story. And last one, D. In Lori's kindergarten class, there is a boy named Charles who acts very badly. Charles kicks people and says bad words, earning himself spankings and gets his mouth washed out with soap. Lori tells his parents all about Charles, and they worry about his bad influence. Lori's mom finds out that there is no Charles at parent-teacher night at school. Yes, no, or maybe. So hopefully you've eliminated 2 answers, narrowed it down to 2 of the best, and then take this red circle up here, and then drag it which answer choice you would like to circle. And this is the last slide, so make sure that you have done each slide correctly. And once you are done with the whole entire project, turn it in through Canvas.